What's up everybody? So in today's video I'm going to demonstrate the latest 5.05 kernel exploit running on my PS4 here. I'll be showing you the simplest way that you can run this kernel exploit on a PlayStation 4 running 5.05 firmware. Having a PlayStation 4 with this lower 5.05 firmware is nice because enabling this kernel exploit allows the PS4 to run PlayStation 4 Homebrew packages, things like emulators. It gives your system the ability to dump and back up your PlayStation 4 game discs. And it also lets your system play PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 4 game backups. There's also heaps of other great features that having a kernel exploit will unlock on your system, and I'll do my best to cover those in future uploads. So this 5.05 kernel exploit for the PlayStation 4 was released very recently on May the 27th. And since it can be run on 5.05, which is a higher firmware version than the existing 4.05 and 4.55 kernel exploits, one of the major advantages of this release is that it will allow your system to run applications and backups which required firmware above those previous exploits. To be able to follow along with today's video, you'll need any model of PlayStation 4 running firmware version 5.05. If you have a PS4 with firmware below this version, or if you've been using one of the older kernel exploits and are looking to update your system to 5.05, stay tuned because I will be uploading a video which goes over how you can update to the specific 5.05 firmware and how you can update from a previous kernel exploit to this one. I should have that video uploaded within the next few days and I'll be sure to link to it when it's finished. So if we take a look at my PS4 here in the settings, system information area, we can see that my PS4 is running system software 5.05, which is exactly what we need for this exploit. If you come into the screen on your PS4 and you can see that you've already installed one of the latest firmwares like 5.55, you should know that unfortunately there is no way to downgrade a PS4, and so you won't be able to run this exploit on your system yet. If you're wanting to run Homebrew on your PS4 today, I would recommend you look at selling your existing PS4 system and trying to find a PS4 running 5.05 firmware. I've already covered on my channel how you can find a PS4 running 5.05 firmware, so you might want to check out that video to learn more. So if your system's like mine and it's running firmware 5.05, I definitely recommend you come into the automatic download settings here in the system menu. And just be sure to remove the tick from this option here, which is system software update files. When this option's ticked, it means your PS4 is going to try and download the latest firmware updates whenever the system's in rest mode and connected to the network. So that's definitely something that we want to disable on our systems. So with that done, we'll come into the network settings, make sure that connect to the internet is ticked, and then choose set up internet connection. In here, just select your method of connecting the PS4 to your network, so either with Wi-Fi or a LAN cable. Then on this next screen, you're going to choose custom. Just going to enter the password for my wireless network here. Next, I'll just choose automatic for my IP address settings, and then do not specify for my DHCP settings. Now when you get to this DNS settings screen, we're going to choose manual. In here, select the primary DNS, and we're going to set that to be 165.227.83.145. Then you can choose secondary DNS, and we're going to set that as 108.61.128.158. So make sure you set up both the DNS servers to look like this. Then just hit next, and I'll just choose automatic MTU settings as well, and I'm not going to specify a proxy server. So with all that done, you can just push circle here to skip a connection test, hit circle to jump back a step again, and then at the very top of your settings menu, come into the users guide, and then just select the users guide. So with those custom DNS servers in use, we should come to this firmware selection PS4 exploit host page by Al-Azif instead of the users guide. So this is a very simple and useful method of running PS4 exploits on your system. This one's actually especially nice because the PS4 system will be able to load this web page even if it doesn't have access to its web browser. There are situations where the PS4 can't run a web browser due to reasons such as never having been activated before or never having connected to the PSN. But even if a PS4 can't run the web browser, as long as those custom DNS servers are online, it'll still be able to access this exploit host page from Al-Azif here. So I highly recommend having this method set up. So with this page loaded, all we need to do is select our installed firmware version, which is 5.05, and in here we get a nice list of available exploits, which are basically payload files that this server is hosting. So the first exploit I'd recommend you run is this blocker. Since your system's running the ideal 5.05 firmware, this payload will help your system block future updates. So all you need to do is select it, wait for this wheel to finish spinning around, and hopefully you'll see this done prompt. It's important to note that sometimes running payloads, they will fail. Might come up with an error on your screen just saying PS4 is out of memory. Usually all you need to do is just push X on the error and the exploit will try to run again. But if it fails multiple times, you can push the home button and browse back to your user's guide to start the process again. Or you can try refresh the page by pushing the options button. So when it's complete and you get the done message, you may also see this notification, welcome to FTPS with update blocker. So the update blocker is great to run once you have 5.05 firmware, just to help reduce the risk of you accidentally updating your system. So then we'll just push the home button and start up the user guide again. Select our 5.05 firmware again, and this time we're going to go ahead and choose mirror. And hopefully when the circle's done spinning, you get this "you're all set" message. And again, don't be too surprised if it fails. You may just need to repeat the process a few times. Worst case scenario, power cycling your PS4 may help it get through. So from here you'll need to tap the home button on your controller, come back into the settings area, and then scroll all the way down to the bottom, and hopefully you'll see this debug settings option. When you can see this debug settings option, that's how you know that the kernel exploit is running on your system. These debug settings only show up when you have the Homebrew enabler or mirror running on your PS4. So there's a ton of really interesting settings that are hidden in here. Be careful not to mess with anything if you don't know what you're doing. But if we just choose the top game option, you'll find the package installer option in here. And this is what we can use to install Homebrew, as well as game backups that are in the fake package format. In future uploads, I'll go into much more details about what fake packages are, as well as how you can dump your own PlayStation 4 games as backups to install on your system. But for right now, I'm just going to demonstrate how we can use this option to install a game backup on our PS4. So over on my computer here, I've connected a USB device. Now for a PS4 to recognize USB devices, it needs to be in either FAT32 or exFAT format. So I've made sure to format my USB drive here as exFAT, and I recommend you make sure your drive is formatted as exFAT as well if you're wanting to install files over 4 GB in size on your PlayStation 4. Speaking of large files, I'm now going to send a package file over to my USB drive. And the file that I'm going to be showing here is a fake package of Final Fantasy 15. And if we look at this file, we can see it's over 40 GB in size. So obviously PS4 game dumps can get really large in file size, and that's why I recommend the exFAT format is used on your drive. So I'm going to copy this file over to the root of my USB drive now. And after a bit of time when it's completed there, I'm just going to eject the USB drive from my computer, connect it to my PS4, and let's head back to the PS4 now. So from the PS4, we're just going to head into the debug settings, choose the game option, choose package installer, and I can see my package file on the USB drive here now. So all I'm going to do is push X and begin the installation process. So what this does is it installs the package file from your USB drive into the PlayStation 4's internal hard drive storage. This will obviously take a little while depending on the size of the content. So when it's completed, you'll see this ready to use notification. And if you just head back to your home screen, you should be able to find the newly installed content. Now when I try to run it, I get this prompt, update system software to use network features. I'm just going to choose update later. And then you can see that thanks to the kernel exploit running on my system, the game is able to load right up.
Noctis王子の出発を認める。
ありがとうございます。陛下。
Alright, so I'll close out of the software for now. And the next thing I want to show you is what happens if I power off my PlayStation 4 and just reboot the system. So when my system comes back on, we can still see the game content installed on the home screen. However, there's now this little padlock down in the corner. Now if I was to try running the game at this point, I'll get this error message saying cannot use the content. To use this content, purchase it from the PlayStation Store. Now this is completely normal. This is what happens if you try to run PlayStation 4 Homebrew or fake package content without having first run the kernel exploit or specifically the mirror or Homebrew enabler payloads on your system. So all you need to do is when you boot up your PlayStation 4, make sure that you come into the user guide first. Select your firmware again and just launch the mirror payload. And here's that error I was talking about before. It says there's not enough free system memory. I'm just going to push X to OK it. And on the second time I got this "you're all set" message here, which is what we want to see. So now if I press the home button on my controller, we can see that Final Fantasy 15 still has the padlock against it, but now if I try to run it, it can launch successfully again. Alright team, so there you have it. There's a basic demonstration and tutorial for running the 5.05 kernel exploit on a PlayStation 4. I've got plenty more PlayStation 4 videos lined up. I'll be sure to take another look at how to send payloads over to the PlayStation 4, either through the self-hosting method, which I covered in my old PS4 videos, or using an ESP8266 device. which allows you to run a WebKit exploit locally using the wireless signal that it puts out. So the advantage there is your PlayStation 4 doesn't need to be connected to the internet, it can be completely offline, and you won't need to launch a payload from a computer or a laptop either. Pretty nice way of future-proofing your PS4 exploit, as it means we don't have to rely on having access to any external websites or DNS servers to be able to run Homebrew on our PlayStation 4. And yeah, I'll also be sure to go over the essential stuff, like backing up your PlayStation 4 games from disk, as well as how to install content to USB drives instead of the internal PS4 hard drive. And if you all have ideas for things you'd like to see me cover on the channel, feel free to let me know. As always, thank you all so much for watching and subscribing. Enjoy the rest of your day, and peace out.